Um, okay, hi everyone. So I'm back as promised um, for the testing of the firmware 2.0 for the Nikon Z9. Um, so just a quick note, just to get this out of the way. I know I have a previous um, video like going through the low light performance on the Z9 using firmware 1.11, and as you'll probably see that you'll be able to conclude that I'm not particularly happy with the performance of the Z9 in 1.11. Now, again, just to get it out of the way, firmware 2.0 is a marked improvement. So unlike before where I don't even have a hit ratio, like the hit ratio on a 51.2, when it goes below 4 EV, I don't even get one thing in focus. Now we're we're getting like a large percentage of it in focus. However, the reason I'm making this video that is not only to show you that there's a marked improvement with version 2.0. I will also show you that Nikon still have um, a lot to do, and you need to watch this whole video to understand like where I'm coming from, like what use case is this, and why I think Nikon still has some work left to do. Again, Z9 2.0 right now is phenomenal, at least like the way it applies to me as a photographer. But again, there's a certain this what I'm going to go through now is a certain use case that I do encounter, that applies to me, um, and I will explain the whole basics of it, the whole details whenever I can. Now, mind you that this will not apply to a lot of you. In fact, I would say a huge portion of Z9 users will probably be happy with firmware 2.0, and that's the end of it. You can stop now. You could stop watching this now because this is going to be a long video because it may not be applicable to you. Now, to give you an idea what particular use case that I'm talking about, the previous video should probably tell you what that is. So I'm primarily an available light shooter using primes, wide open aperture, and available light. So we're talking about like at least 4 EV of light. It said typical indoors is 5 EV, but realistically I think it's more of 4 EV. So at least in my household, 4 EV could go even low as 3 EV, depending on where I am at the house or what time of the day it is. So 3 EV, 4 EV. So I think that's where you are at, for most indoor shots. Okay, so again, I cannot stress this enough. 1.11, 2.0, there's a marked improvement for the Z9 in this particular situation. Below 4 EV, the hit rate is a night and day difference, so to speak. But as I go through this exercise, and I decided to go through the entire video of my whole process rather than opening it in X Studio and see the if the after after the whole thing is done. So this is for me. There's little doubt on the process that I went through in order to prove of that again. Given that 2.0 is a marked improvement, there's still quite a bit for Nikon to work on. All right, so here's my current setup. So I have I have the iPhone running 1080p 60 frames per second So you'll see, like, as much as, um, how the whole thing works, as opposed to 30 frames per second. um, I didn't go for 4K because I don't think there's any benefit for going through as much as high as that, but whatever. So I have my um, mannequin head over there. So I have right now a an LED light. So it's a, just to give you a show like what that is. It's an Aperture Amaran line 100x. So it's a bicolor LED, and so it's, everything is set on a tripod, and you have this right. And I have this relatively old Shinobi external monitor, so you could have a better view, a larger view of what's going on from this, what is output from the LCD or the live view. And so yeah, so you can see a better view of what's going on with the camera. All right, so I also have like an external meter over there, so I'll explain why that's important. So um, so let's begin the whole thing. I'm going to turn off the light. So the only light source that's hitting the mannequin is pretty much coming from the LED, right? Oh, one other thing. This bicolor is set, the white balance is set to 3200K. Because when it goes to indoor lights, as you go, you're talking about artificial light for the most part, right? You're not talking hospital lights, so you're looking at like light color temperature between, I guess, 2800, 2700 to a little over 30, 3000K. So let's put it at 3200 just to be to even things up. All right, so now we have a cyclonic meter so that we could do an incident metering of what's hitting the mannequin head. Now this is very important, right? So we don't want the exposure value of the entire image, because again we're looking at at the lights that hitting that is being used by the autofocus point. So in reality, I mean, technically we should be doing like a reflective meter of this face, but it's kind of, to me, it's kind of like a pain in the ass. So this should be close enough, as opposed to metering the whole scene, right? So I'm doing an incident meter on this. So you can see here, you have that exposure value right there, right? So okay, so to begin the entire process, so this is not the first time I've done this, obviously. I've done through the whole, before even recording this video. So I'm gonna cut some some of the basics, so to speak. So we're gonna start at EV4, right? So why EV4? Because it's the Z9, the EyeAF is infallible. EV4 and above, it's almost like, it's so good, it's scary. So I mean, that's your $5,500 right there. It's almost impossible to fool at anything, and when you have enough light on the Z9, especially with the firmware 2.0. So we're going to measure the incident, right? So we're measuring, so 3.9, 4.0, same banana, right? So just to be clear, yeah, 3.9, so close enough. You will see so again, just to be clear, right? Yeah, AFS. We are AFS, IA area, and subject detector on. So we are doing this. So if you, yeah, it's kind of, yeah. So you can see there, it's not even like, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. Go to the other eye. We can go to the other eye. And when it makes that noise like that, you can, it's saying it's in focus, right? And if you even go through that, yeah, no problem, right? So that's for EV. Now let's reduce the light a little bit. So I've reduced the light, measure it, 3.4. Let's make it a little, so it's 3.5. Yeah, 3.5. All right, so let's do it again. Again, there's no doubt, right? It's 3.5. It's still pretty good. So if you go, yeah, so 3.5, the Nikon Z9 still pretty good with, like, IAF, right? Now let's go down further. So that's gonna be, wait, that's 2.6. Let's go 3.0 so that right, 3.0. Just to, yeah, still 3.0. Yeah. Yeah, no problem, right? Just for, like, reference, with version 1.11 firmware, where there's not even like a thing. So we're already, like, I can't even focus at this point. Nothing's in focus for 1.11. So let's go down further to 2.5. And this is where the issue comes in. 2.2. No, that's too low. Let's not go that low. 2.2. 2.2. 3.0. Oh my god, it's so high. 2.6. All right. Actually, it's still doing well. Now let's try to see. Well, see, now it's out of focus. What's interesting here, still in focus. Let's try to see. At this point, it's also out of focus, right? It would, the AFS would confirm that it's in focus, but what's recorded is actually back focus. So here it's back focus. So just to hold the focus. See if you could. It says it's in focus, but you can see here. Okay, maybe not. It's not as obvious here, I guess. But it's out. It's here. It's out of focus. You see the the skin is blown out, but you can see the eye. The the eye is not the contrast is not as good because it's out of focus. The interesting thing here is that so it's out of focus right now. When you press the focus again and we engage the AF, it will actually go in focus, right? So what's happening there? So the issue here is not so much about whether Nikon Z9 can focus on the eye or not. It can. I think the problem is the algorithm of identifying the eye, because remember these cameras are employing some kind of AI in order to identify which part of the face is the eye, and then tell the lens to focus on that portion of the subject. So it's a 3D subject, trying to capture in a 2D plane. So so again, that's something that you have to keep in mind as we go through it, because there's still a lot more to be done actually. So you can now see that it becomes a problem for Z9, for EyeAF to hit focus when it's 2.5 EV, around 2.5 EV. Again, not to be 2.5, that's already pretty low. So we were looking at like 2 EV is like a really dark room, like very little light coming in. So 2 EV is like punishing for that in that situation, right? So if this is my only camera, right, I would say, yeah, let's call it a day. I just need to remember at 2.5 EV, I need to switch to I cannot rely on EyeAF to focus on it. Again, mind you, this is only a problem on EyeAF. If I switch to something else like this, it's not going to be a problem. Even at, so yeah, so it's, you can actually also, the other alternative is go to wide small and turn off sub eye detection. It will focus. No, let's wait. No, again, no problem. So again, it's not that the Z9 cannot focus on the little light that's available. It's just failing to identify the eye itself, like whatever the algorithm is that it has. So 2.5, keep that in mind. 2.5 EV, Z9 EyeAF starts to fail. Now you're probably asking, all right, so 2.5 EV again, very that's a very edge case situation for a lot of us, right? So what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Well, here's the thing. Z9 is not my only camera. This is actually an upgrade to my other camera, which is this. This is the original Z6, the Z6, not ZC Mark II, the original Z6 Mark 1. This is with the latest firmware. I think it's, I don't know, 3.4 or something like that. And bear with me as we change through this whole thing, right? We're going to change the whole setup. Right, let's move the outermost. Now let's change the EV cable. All right. Is that better? All right, so now we have the Z6 mounted, like the f1.2 51.2 mounted on the Z6 at this point. So as you can see, AFS still on the IAF mode, right? Full screen, because that's the only thing G6 is able to do, right? So here's the thing. You can see that even at 2.5, the Z6 can focus no problem. Oh my god. See? Still in focus. Let's go to the other eye. See? That's my issue right now, is that the Z6 in the same situation, Z6, like, you know, a 3-year-old camera at this point, still performs better than the Z9 on 2.5 EV, right? Now it, like, you know, this part is probably gonna make it much worse for everyone, I guess, because like I'm gonna even take this as low as it goes, right? So iconic reading, so 2.2, right? 2.2 at this point. That's as low as it could go. So even at that, on that light, the Z6 can still focus. So at 2 EV, I can still rely on the Z6 to be able to focus on the eye without any issues. So that's the crutch, like, you know, that's the bottom line here. So the Z9 can reliably focus up to like, you know, maybe 3.0 EV, a little over under 3.0. 2.5 it becomes really dicey for Z9, for IAF to be able to focus. Z6, 2.5, 2.0, I would probably wager that even below that, Z6 can still probably will be able to focus with IAF, right? So that's the conclusion that I'm trying to get at here. Is that in my mind, I think it's fair to make a demand that the Z9 should be better at Z4 than Z6 in this situation. There's really no reason for Z6 to be better than the Z9 on this regard. So that's what I mean by Nikon still having quite a bit to do to rectify this. And to me, and I think I have reason to believe that this should be fixable in firmware. They need to update their algorithm to detect the eye. Now, speaking of that, I have a wild theory, like something really wild, on why I think the Z9 performs the way it is on this situation. And I think it has something to do with, like, because IAF, the certain expectation is to be able to focus on the iris itself, not the eyelash or whatever, which is like, the Z9, which is like the Z series cameras is kind of like known to do. They focus on the eyelash rather than the eye. So what I think is happening is that in this situation, like in this low light situation, where the Z9 is focusing, it would identify the eye, but it would adjust the focus ever so slightly so that it would focus on the eyeball. And I think that's where the algorithm fails somehow. I think what Nikon just need to do, right? Because at this point, right, the depth of field is sort of at this distance, a medium distance, right? Again, this is the 51.2. It will differ for any lens. So the depth of field, it becomes negligible between the eye and the eyelash. So I think like what Nikon needs to do is that at certain distances, when it identifies the eye, just take the shot. Don't adjust the focus to go back a little bit, because it will tend to overshoot it. Again, that's me. I mean, I'm just trying to state my theories because I'm a computer developer by trade. And if I'm given this challenge, right, that's how I would go about it. Again, as a computer developer, I can't help it. So that's how I would do it. All right. So in conclusion, so let me reiterate a few things, right? Firmware 2.0, Z9, amazing. For 90% of you people using the Z9, you cannot really go wrong with upgrading to 2.0. Now, for people like me, right? Available light shooter, wide open. So we're talking about certain professionals, like wedding professionals, who are often in the same situation, right? Available light inside a church, whatever. So when you hit EV 2.5 EV, IAF starts to get dicey. And to get around that, for now, is to either use the wide area AF small and turn off subject detection, or use like single point AF. And obviously the third one is to like use a smaller aperture. In fact, and I probably need to state this is that so I'm doing this at like f1.2 because I just wanted to show you like the situations where it's most obvious. When I actually stop down the lens to 2.8, problem doesn't exist. So regardless of like 2.5 or whatever, it will appear in focus, right? But only because the problem at 2.8, the problem is somewhat masked by the greater depth of field. So I just needed to point that out. So if your lenses is like 2.8 for the most part, right, and you're using this to your available light, chances are you won't see this problem. You will only see this problem if like you're shooting again wide area, like wide aperture with IAF. Again, IAF is the only problem. So that's where the problems will rise. Okay, so I'll stop it here. I'm probably rambling on. So hopefully this gives a better explanation of like what situations where the Z9 Eye AF can be problematic and how to get around it. And hopefully Nikon is watching this so that they could address it in a future firmware update. Okay, until next time.